like me, I love making cupcakes, but I know that if you're new to cake decorating, it can sometimes be hard to know where to start. So I've created my ultimate guide to creating cupcakes. This is great if you're a beginner and you're just starting out making cupcakes, or you're looking for some hints and tips. I really hope you'll enjoy this video and find it useful. Okay, let's get started. So if you're totally new to making cupcakes, the first things that you're gonna need is a cupcake tray, or they're also called a muffin tray. And you'll also need some cupcake cases. Now, these ones are made of paper, and all the tray is gonna do is just hold your cases so that they keep their shape. Now, I always get a lot of questions about the cupcake cases that I use. They measure around 5 centimeters on the bottom, around 4 centimeters in height, and this is gonna give you a cupcake of around 7 centimeters across the top. Now, you can also get foil lined ones, but I tend to just make sure that my cupcake cases are made of quite a thick paper. This means that you're going to keep the colour on the outside. What I mean by this is if you've got some thinner ones, as you can see, these are more like greaseproof paper and are a bit more see-through. What will happen when you bake in these ones is you'll see the colour of your cupcakes through it. So you just want to decide the type of look that you're going for. Now, as well as full-size cupcakes, you can also get mini cupcakes, which are great alongside full-size cupcakes. If you're making these, you want to do exactly the same. So just make sure you get a mini cupcake tray, which can hold your paper cases. So I'm going to start just by adding my cupcake cases into my tray. Now I'm going to be making these cupcakes as vanilla cupcakes and using my vanilla cupcake recipe. Now I will put the full recipe in the description below the video, along with some links to some other of my favourite cupcake recipes. Now before I add my mixture into my cases, one thing that I wanted to mention is sometimes you can get quite oily bottoms to your cupcakes. This happens with some recipes, and also if you're using quite thin cupcake cases. So if you are finding that this is happening to you, one thing that you can do to solve this is to use a little bit of uncooked rice, just by sprinkling a few grains of rice at the bottom and placing your cupcake cases over the top. When your cupcakes are in the oven, the rice is going to soak up any excess oil. You then want to divide your mixture between all of your cases. Now your cupcake mixture will rise when you bake it, so you want to fill your cupcake cases around 1/3 of the way up. So this is a heaped tablespoon, or if you want to do them exactly, it's around 56 to 59 grams of mixture per case. Now, once all of your cupcake cases have been filled, you then want to bake these in your oven. Now, I will use just a normal oven setting at 180 degrees Celsius for around 23 to 25 minutes until they're cooked all the way through, and with the vanilla ones, we have a nice golden colour on the top. I get a lot of questions about using a fan oven. I tend to use a normal oven setting just because with a fan oven, it tends to bake the outside of your cakes or your cupcakes a lot quicker than the inside. So you can end up with a bit of a harder shell on the top of your cupcake, or what can happen is it can start to bake the outer edge, and as your cupcake rises, it can burst through the top, giving you kind of like a volcano looking top to your cupcake. Now, if you only have a fan oven setting, all you want to do is just reduce the temperature to stop that outer shell baking so quickly. And you may need to bake your cupcakes for a few minutes longer. Once your cupcakes are baked, I've just taken them out of the oven and just placed my tray on my wire rack. To check that my cupcakes are baked all the way through, I'm going to use a cocktail stick and just push that into the center. If that comes out clean, then you know that they're baked all the way through. So I'm just going to leave my cupcakes in my cupcake tray just until they've cooled down enough that I can lift them out. I'm then going to leave them on my cooling rack until they have completely cooled. Now, in baking cupcakes, one thing that some people do have a problem with is their cupcake cases peeling away from the sides of their cupcakes. Now, there are a few reasons why this would happen. The first one is your cupcakes may be slightly underbaked. Another reason may just be the cupcake cupcake cases themselves. So if you're finding this happening a lot, maybe try a different brand of cupcake case. Now, one of the most common reasons for this to happen is actually the way that you store the cupcakes. So maybe you're using a metal cake tin or a plastic tub with a plastic lid. Firstly, if you place the cupcakes into the cake tin before they have completely cooled, you may see condensation appear on the lid of your tub or your cake tin. Now, even if your cupcakes have been left to completely cool before you've added them into your tin, because you've added the lid on and you're stopping any air circulating, it can warm up inside your tin and create moisture. And it's this moisture that allows those paper cases just to peel away from your cupcakes. So if you're not quite ready to decorate your cakes straight away, once they have cooled down, just pop them into a cardboard cake box and make sure you've pulled the lid all the way down. This will allow air to circulate round and stop those cupcake cases peeling off. Now, obviously this cupcake box only holds 4 cupcakes, but you can get larger ones to hold all 12. Okay, so now we have our baked cupcakes. The next thing to do is to decorate them. And a great way to do this is by adding buttercream onto the top. So I'm going to show you how you can pipe buttercream onto your cupcakes. So for this you're going to need some piping bags. These ones are just disposable piping bags, but you can also get reusable ones. And I've also got some piping tips. Now, piping tips come in so many different sizes and shapes. It can be hard to know which piping tips you need for cupcakes. If we have a look at these closely, the really smaller ones are not going to give you much buttercream out of that end nozzle. So for cupcakes, you want to be using larger piping tips. So these ones measure around 1.5 centimeters to 2 centimeters on the end. Now, probably the question that I get asked the most often is which piping tips should you get if you're starting to pipe cupcakes? And my answer to this is the 1M and the 2D. Now, when you look at piping tips, they tend to have a number and a letter or just numbers on the front. And this is a universal reference to the shape of the piping tip. So this one, for example, is a Wilton 1M, but if I was to get a 1M from a different brand, it would usually be exactly the same size and shape. So here I've got the 1M, and this is an open star tip, so the points come straight up. I've then got a 2D, and this is a closed star tip. So it's the same kind of shape, but the points at the top are just folded over. One thing to mention with the 2D piping tip is where all the points come over, you want to have a small gap in the center. Now, sometimes when you wash this piping tip, it can get a bit squidged and you lose that gap, which means when you go to pipe cupcakes, you'll see kind of a gap in your swirl. So all you want to do, if they have, is just go in with a knife and just tease those back. Now, the reason I love these 2 piping tips, if you are starting out piping cupcakes, is there is so many different options to what you can do with these piping tips. You can create a classic buttercream swirl or a classic rosette swirl. You can then change it up and create so many different effects. Now, I do have another video tutorial where I compare these 2 piping tips and show you 8 different effects you can create just with these. So I will put a link to this in the description below. Once you've perfected the buttercream swirl and the rosette swirl, you can then start using some other piping nozzles. One bit of advice that I would say is don't go out and buy hundreds of piping tips to start with. Start with a few and just have a look around and work out the different styles you like and build up your collection that way. So the next thing to do is add our piping tip into our piping bag. So you just want to take a look at the piping tip, hold it on the end, coming up around halfway, cut into my piping bag, slot your piping nozzle in, pulling it right to the end and making sure that it's nice and secure on the end of your bag. That's then ready for you to add your buttercream. Now, one thing that I did want to mention are couplers. Now, these are great if you're using one color buttercream, but you want to use multiple piping tips. This really saves you using loads of different piping bags. And these are just 2 different style ones. You want to get different size ones for different size piping tips. So this one is a larger one. If I unscrew that, it comes in 2 halves, and this one just fits larger piping tips. And the Wilton one, you can add on slightly smaller ones. So in order to fit these into a piping bag, you want to do the same thing. Snip off the end. You want to make sure that your bag is coming over the section with the grooves on there. You can then add your piping tip to the outside of your bag while screwing on the second part. That's then nice and secure for you to add your buttercream into the end. When you want to replace the piping nozzle, all you then do is just twist off the end, remove the piping tip you no longer want to use, and just replace another one. So these are really great if you are using the same colour buttercream and you want to save the amount of piping bags that you're using. I've then got some American buttercream, which I've coloured in this pink colour to match my cupcake cases, and I will put a link in the description below to my buttercream recipe. Now I always use just a tall glass to hold my piping bag, and this just allows me to fill the piping bag without having to try and hold it with one hand. You then want to take that off and just holding the end, I'm going to twist that round whilst pushing that buttercream to the end of my piping bag. Now I'm right-handed, but you can do this in your left hand. You want to twist the end of the bag just to make sure it's nice and secure, and I hold this between my first finger and my thumb. This is where I'm going to apply pressure to the end of my bag. You can then either use this hand to guide it round or just lightly hold it with the other hand, just bringing it round the top of your cupcake. Now I'm going to go through how to do a normal swirl and also how to do a rosette swirl. For the normal swirl, using the 1M piping tip, hold the piping bag just slightly above your cupcake, applying pressure and just working it around the outside of that cupcake case. Once we've done one rotation, bring your piping bag in slightly and do another rotation around just on the edge of the previous layer. I'm going to come to the end and do exactly the same, just bring it up. So we're creating this pyramid of buttercream. Once I've got that nice buttercream swirl, I'm going to stop applying pressure before I pull the piping bag away to give me a lovely point on the top. Now, one thing to think about is the speed that you pipe your cupcakes will actually affect the outcome of how they'll look. If you do your buttercream swirl quite fast, you'll get quite smooth straight lines. But the slower you go, the more buttercream comes out of your piping bag, which gives you a slightly ruffled effect. And you can see examples of this in the video where I show you the comparisons between the 1M and the 2D. Now, in comparison to the classic buttercream swirl, we've got the rosette swirl. Now, instead of starting on the outside of your cupcake, we're actually going to start in the center. So we're going to apply pressure to allow some of that buttercream to come out and connect with the top of our cupcake. I'm then going to wrap my piping bag around, just creating a little circle in the middle before continuing to wrap it around the outside of the previous curve until I get all the way to the edge. Once I reach the edge, I'm going to stop applying pressure and just pull my piping bag off to the side just to finish off that rosette. Now, where I use the 1M piping tip for the classic buttercream swirl, I've popped my 2D piping tip into my piping bag for the rosette. Now, if you find that your buttercream gets quite soft quite quickly where you're holding your piping bag, my advice is to put a smaller amount of buttercream in your piping bag and just refill it as and when you need. This is going to stop the heat of your hand warming up that buttercream as you pipe your cupcakes. You can then finish off your cupcakes with some sprinkles or some decoration of your choice. Once I've piped my cupcakes, if they're not going to be eaten straight away or I need to transport them, then I do like to pop them back into the cardboard cupcake boxes. If it's quite cool where you are, you can then either leave them out, or if it's quite hot, you can pop the cupcakes into the fridge. If you do have any fondant decorations on your cupcakes, the change in temperature can make the fondant go slightly shiny once you take them out due to the change of the fridge temperature to the room temperature. So just leave these to one side and this will dry up. Another thing you want to remember is to always take them out of the fridge around half an hour before you want to eat them so that that sponge can get back to room temperature, so it'll be nice and soft and fluffy. So here we have the finished piped cupcakes. I really hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial, and if you're new to making cupcakes, this video will be helpful. If you have enjoyed the video, as always, don't forget to give it a like, and if you'd like to see more videos like this and you haven't already, then don't forget to subscribe to the Cake Spaniel's YouTube channel. You can also hit the notification bell next to the subscribe button, and this will just alert you every time I upload a new video. Now, I will put a list of all the tools that I've used throughout today's video in the description below, along with all the recipes and also some other videos that you might also find useful. So until next time, bye!